ESPN in 2013 as the Saints reporter for NFL Nation. He's been covering the Saints as a reporter and columnist since 2005, previously for the Times-Picayune. His duties include daily coverage of the Saints for ESPN.com, as well as making appearances on SportsCenter. I'm sure you've seen him. And contributions to ESPN Magazine. Of course, also ESPN Fantasy, ESPN Radio, you name it. Wherever they need him, he's there. And the Saints, of course, are 8-3 after losing 26-20 in Los Angeles. This past Sunday, they will play Carolina this Sunday at 3:25 in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. Please give a warm welcome to Mike Triplett. Mike?
You never got reimbursed?
You didn't get through my sports, my athletic accomplishments. I think I can hold my own with Chad and Terrence up here. Well, hey, first I want to say it's an honor to be up here with these high school coaches. I do some mentoring sometimes, and with the kids that I've worked with, in addition to what your teams are accomplishing, you guys are so important in the lives of kids, probably more important than anyone I can imagine, in addition to their parents. And so I hope you guys are really proud of the programs you've built in that aspect too. The Saints, if we've got some Saints fans in here, you must really hate the NFC South more than ever this year, because even an 8-game win streak is not enough to get out of practically a three-way tie with the Panthers and Falcons. It's pretty amazing that the Saints won 8 straight games, and the season hasn't really even gotten started yet. Hosting Carolina this week, then Atlanta twice in 3 weeks after that. It's going to be pretty grueling. It's amazing. This reminds me a lot of 2011 when the Saints were 13-3 and they were the 3 seed in the NFC. Right now at 8-3, they're the 4th seed in the NFC because they lost to both Minnesota and the Rams. So this is going to be quite an uphill battle for them. But they're about as well equipped to handle it as almost as you can ever recall. I don't think Drew Brees in the passing game is as dynamic as it was in 2009 and 2011, but I think this is a better run game and a better defense than they've had, making them maybe almost as complete a team as they've been. I think you'll need to see a little bit more from the passing game when they need it. You did see that at the end of the Washington game. Unfortunately, it did not show up for them in Los Angeles, but if they can get Marshawn Lattimore healthy again at cornerback, I don't know if he's going to be ready or not this week, but that defense is definitely as solid as any defense in the NFC South. The run game's incredible. It's not Hanville, 4,000 yards compared to 500, but with Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, it's as balanced as we've ever seen this offense. I've never had any problem with the Saints throwing the ball as much as they have in the Peyton Brees era, because they've been the best in the NFL at it, and you do what you do best. But running the ball is now something they do best, and there's no question that when you're that balanced, and when the offensive line's playing as well as it is, it makes you a better team. So I think they're built for it, but unfortunately they're in the NFC instead of the AFC this year. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I thought this was the worst game of Vaccaro's career, and especially on that one play where he just kind of stopped. Did he ever answer the reason why? It couldn't be the sun, because the receiver was looking in the sun too. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, what was his reason? Was he just not there?
No, he did answer that yesterday, and I wasn't there, but I saw the quotes where he did say he turned back and immediately got hit by the sun. Maybe the receiver had more time to adjust and did not even realize the pass was thrown, which is why he looked so confused. But as he, to his credit, mentioned, which I thought was the more unforgivable thing, that he should have pursued after that, because you never know, there could have been a cutback. He still could have gotten back into that play, and that was ugly. It was a high-profile mistake. Unfortunately for him, he makes so many dynamic plays. He's had a few of those moments in his career where he's made some high-profile mistakes, and he's gotten temporarily benched a couple of times, including earlier this year. So you got to hope it's one of those things that gets him. He also admitted, after missing 2.5 games, that he was showing some mental rust in that game. He admitted it was not a great game for him. They're going to need him to play like he was playing from weeks 3 through before his injury, which was some of his best football. But you're right, he's one of the players on the Saints who's had a lot of highs and lows, but his highs are pretty good, and I think when that whole secondary gets healthy together, he can be a strength. But you're right, he was one of the guys who struggled in this game.
And is Lattimore and the other defensive starters due to be back this week?
We don't know yet. Tomorrow will be the first time we see them on the practice field and find out if they're back out there. We still won't know really until we see if they practice at all before Friday. But I do think they're both short-term enough injuries that they should be back by mid-December. Obviously, you'd like to have them back for 2 games in 5 days against Carolina and Atlanta, though.
And is that the same thing with Armstead?
I think, you know what, this is another new injury for him because he left with a hamstring injury, which wasn't the same thing he was dealing with before. He said something to the effect of he'll be okay in the locker room, but he could be another guy who is questionable for this week. It's not great news for the games coming up, but I don't think any of those things should keep them from being back mid-December, late December, and ideally a playoff run.
What's up with Willie Snead? He's caught like 4 passes. I know.
Yeah.
I realize he was suspended for a few games, but he's like, seems like totally out of the offense.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think part of the problem was he's a great example of nothing, your spot is not reserved for you, probably at any level of football, especially in the NFL. He missed those 3 games and then another 2 or so with the hamstring injury. And in the meantime, the Saints really like what they've gotten out of Ted Ginn Jr. and Brandon Coleman. And Brandon Coleman's been pretty decent in the red zone, but he's been really, really good as a blocking receiver for them. So when Willie Snead came back, the 4th receiver job was all there really was for him. Now you'd like to see them try to incorporate him more, especially since their 3rd down percentage has been worse than ever before, really in the Peyton Breeze era. But he's sort of also, they're not throwing the ball a ton. They haven't needed to force him back into the mix since everything is working so well. But he's certainly had a little bit of a down year, and you slip up and miss a little time, and there's good quality players ready to step up in front of you. I mean, you wouldn't say that you think you should be using Coleman or Ginn less, but obviously you'd like to see Snead contribute more than he has been so far.
Hey, Mr. Triplett. Having been at the Coliseum, Whodats around us, we all just felt that they weren't playing with intensity or any urgency until that last drive.
Yeah.
But the one before that, we also questioned why didn't they go for the touchdown and not the field goal? What is, you see them every day.
Right.
Were they looking ahead?
Well, no, a couple different things. I always have so much trouble as a sports writer, not being in the locker room, not being at practices, not being on the field. The intensity urgency thing, I think that's sort of a chicken and an egg. When a team is winning, you say, wow, look at their intensity and urgency. When they're losing, you say they don't have it. I mean, any one of the offensive coaches in here could read the stat sheet and say what went wrong. It was third and 11, it was 3rd and 8, it was 3rd and 12. Holding penalties, 112 yards in penalties. Their time of possession on offense was like, whatever it was, 22 minutes or something in that game. They just couldn't sustain a drive. They were 3 of 14 on 3rd downs, and they were 3rd and longs because it was 1st and 20 and it was 2nd and 15 all game long. So it was just a stop and start offense. There was no rhythm. You are right, though, that when they have to go into hurry up 2-minute no huddle offense, they zip right down the field. That's 2 weeks in a row. I've always wondered why they don't just do that all the time with Breeze, because it feels like they're impossible to stop when they have that urgency. But they were knocked out of rhythm by sloppy play. I don't know that you can just say they were mailing in this game, but look, 8-game win streak, emotional victory, traveling across the country to LA, playing out in that sun. There's a lot of reasons why it's going to be hard for that to be an emotional high game, so you got to fall back on other things when you're not just winning based on emotion. And as for that call, I agree with you. Sean Payton defended that one pretty strongly, said it wasn't even a consideration in his mind. They had to get points. But I thought it would have been a pretty easy decision to go for the touchdown there, and then you're only down by 1 more score. I think the percentages say they should have gone for a touchdown too, but I think he also knew that if they had started to get some momentum, and if they don't score a touchdown there, it's kind of like the game is over at that point, and they wanted to keep that momentum going. But it's obviously one you can second guess, no doubt about it. All right, thank you.